that we didn't have you the last
I'd like to call
time
this
and
meeting to
everything
order.
got screwed
Mrs.
up.
Dorian, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Surely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine Law Statement. All requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darian, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta will not be joining us this evening. Mr. Del Greco.
Here.
Mrs. Downey. Here. Mrs. Norian.
Here.
Mr. Nutlin.
Here.
Mrs. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Darian.
Here.
Mrs. Dickles.
Here. Open to the public for agenda items only. Okay, at this time we'll move to the superintendent's report.
I have two parts to my report today. I'm going to start just by reviewing some items on the agenda, and then I will launch into our annual testing results presentation. So first of all, on our personnel addendum, you will notice that we hired a new part-time school counselor, and Miss Heather Brown Houston, I did it, is with us tonight. We're very excited to now fully be staffed for the remainder of the school year. Also, under administrative items, you will notice several of our annual approvals. So, for example, the statement of assurance regarding the use of paraprofessionals is required twice a year. It just states to the county that all our paraprofessionals, especially those that are being used in special education, have a specific job description. And we also keep on record here every paraprofessional's name and their specific job this year. You will also notice that our board attorney has a law firm change as they merge with another law firm. Our nursing services plan is an annual plan that is submitted to the county. This is something we do in conjunction with our school doctor. It includes her standing orders and that she has reviewed all our records. The Cardiac Respiratory Emergency Action Plan names the staff members in the building that do have CPR certification and the protocols for what to do in terms of if a code blue was to occur. And the approval of the acceptance of the Week of Respect. The Week of Respect actually will be occurring during our next board meeting. In this week's board update, I will include a list of the activities for that week. And with that, I'm actually going to go to the podium today because it's a little easier for me to present and actually see the data. So we know that every year it is a requirement to publicly present the annual testing data for the NJSLA, the WIDA access testing, and any dynamic learning map testing within 60 days of receiving those test results. At Oradell Public School, this is a summary of the testing that has happened. So we know in the spring, we took the NJSLA in language arts in grades 3 through 6, mathematics in grades 3 through 6. Our lucky fifth graders also got to take science. In the August board meeting, I shared about the access testing for English language learners, and we have no students on site that take dynamic learning maps, which is used for students with more significant special education needs. And because the number of students we have out of district is less than 10, I can't share that data anyway. On the bottom, you'll see an overview of the amount of time each testing period took. And as a reminder, there are two different scoring rubrics used by the state, because why make anything easy? In language arts and math, we have a 5-point scoring rubric, and in science, we have a 4-point scoring rubric. I much prefer the 4-point scoring rubric. I'm not a big fan of level 3. I think the science rubric is much clearer. We are required to share the participation rates for our students. So this shows you per grade and each subject area what percentage of students did partake in testing. If a student chooses to opt out of testing, that could be for a variety of reasons. There is one student who didn't take NJSLA testing because they broke their wrist, and their parent felt that it was just a lot more to put on them to do scribed work, and said, I know how she's doing as a learner, I don't need it this year. So what have we already done? We had, as I shared with the board at the retreat, we had very initial testing data all the way back at the end of June. That's just individual students. We don't have subgroup data, but we have individual student data and proficiency levels. So at that point, we actually started to look at that data, and we did identify some students for summer programming. At this point, we've also begun to look at our NJSLA data and how did it compare to the Linkit end of the year benchmark. As a reminder, Linkit originally came to be as predictive software. It was meant to help districts identify how would students do on state assessments. And we have triangulated data looking at different sources. All of our data will be shared with parents by the end of this week. I, at that time, will email all parents an electronic copy of the letter, because once again, it's a fun part of the state. We are required to send that letter home with the scores in paper form. There are links throughout that letter. So we will send an electronic copy home to our parents as well. We have updated that data into the data locker in Linkit. And as I shared earlier, we have already begun to use that data for identification into intervention programs and federal and state funding programs. This summer's program was actually a language arts program for students entering 6th grade. So I'm going to start by talking about science. I always like to start by talking about science because everybody else does science last, like it just doesn't matter. So we'll start by science while you're still very into the presentation. So these are our science percentage levels for our 5th graders last year. So if you go all the way to the left, you will notice that 5.5 of our students scored a level 1, compared to 35% of the state. If you go all the way to the combined level, you will notice that 65.4% of Oradell Public School students passed the NJSLA science assessment, compared to 27.6% across the state. The state has identified that they have a problem in their science testing, and they are putting together committees to look at redoing this assessment. Because anytime you have an assessment where a quarter of the state is passing, if I remember correctly, 5th grade passing rate is actually higher than 8th grade. So if we're saying across the state, 1/4 of students are passing an assessment, we might want to really look at the assessment as well. We are required to share subgroup analysis, so here you will see our all students level of passing compared to students with IEP and current and former ELL students. And you can also look at that data by race and ethnicity. As a reminder, we are not allowed to share any data if the number of students in that category is less than 10. So because we are talking about 5th grade, we had about 125 5th graders last year. There is other categories that aren't represented because the number was less than 10. And we are actually not required to present gender data, but it's something that I always like to look at anyway. And the good news is our males and our females are performing equally on science assessments. And this will just give you a 3-year trend analysis on the percent passing rate for the district compared to the state in 2022, 2023, and 2024. So you will see that we have our highest passing rate since actually the science assessment came to be. and our difference from the state is at its highest level also. What was exciting for me about that, first, I know that something the board is most interested in is how are we doing to our comparison group, which would be the Bergen County I cohort. You know I will not have that data till December, so that's why that red line there doesn't have a 2024 average yet. But I like to include it anyway because I always say the shape of the data tells a story, and you can see that yellow and is very straight, and we're going up. So that says to me that our science growth is something we should celebrate. 125. Oh, you mean the Bergen County cohort? 20. There are 21 districts in the Bergen. The celebration that I am most excited about is when I did this presentation last year, I told you that we were actually showing lower levels of performance in physical science. So we started to do a lot more with our STEM program and the STEM nights, and we actually are showing equal performance in all three scientific domains right now. So that's something we want to just continue to look at to make sure that often in elementary schools, life science is where everyone goes first, and physical science and earth and space science are secondary. We want to make sure that our curriculum and the daily implementation of that curriculum is showing focus in all three of those areas, and also that we're continuing to do activities in our classrooms and in our STEM lab and during our night events that encourage the investigative practices, the sense-making practices, and the critiquing practices of scientists. So from science, we are going to move on to mathematics. And this shows you this year's, I know there is so much data on this table. One of the things that I like to point out is that if you look all the way on the left, we are showing less than 2% at does not meet expectations compared to over 10% of the state. And then I tend to go all the way over to our combined level 4 and 5, or what we would have determined as passing percentages. And you will see that our third graders had a 72.8 passing percentage compared to 47.5% in the state. Our fourth graders are showing a little bit lower of a passing percentage at 69.7, and then we go to 74.8 and 74.3. But one of the pieces that you'll see, and you'll notice even more when we look at it in a different form, is that while the state is going down, we actually go up. And again, here we have our subgroup analysis. So we have all students with IEP and multilingual learners. This is data that I do review with Dr. Roth because we look specifically then at individual cohorts of students. That's one of the nice things about Oradell Public, that we don't have to just talk about the group, we can really look at the students that made up that group. And the reason we only have a total for multilingual learners is because we do not have 10 multilingual learners in any of those 4 grades. But if I total them together, I get over 10. And this is our proficiency by ethnicity and race. We're seeing a similar trend that we saw last year with regard to our Hispanic or Latino students, and that's something that we need to continue to dig into and really identify who those students are. And our proficiency by gender, which we do have some stereotypical males showing higher levels of proficiency than females. The numbers aren't so drastically different compared to what you will see later in language arts that I was not as concerned about this at this time. And again, now we have our 22, our 23, and our 24 trend analysis. One of the things I like to point out on this, and again, I hate that I don't have the county data yet because I feel like I'm missing a really important piece of the puzzle. So the best I can always do is look at the differential between the district and the state. So as concerned as I am about this 69.7% in 4th grade, if you look at, this is the same group in 4th grade here that was in 3rd grade last year. So their differential from the state is equivalent. So they're not necessarily showing a dip down or a dip up. They're just not growing the way we would like to see them grow. And again, I always like to point out that as the state is trending downward, we tend to trend a little more upward. And if you like a picture instead of numbers. And I think, again, what you notice there is I'm still, this dip right here is the dip that's concerning me the most, this 4th grade dip. I've included a new chart this year. It's called mobility analysis, and it's one of the pieces of data that Linkit does for us. It tells us, compared to how students did last year, did they go up or down a level? So that may mean they went from, if they went up a level, that may mean they went from approaching standards to meeting standards. It also may mean they went from meeting standards to exceeding standards. It may mean they went to did not meet to partially met. So again, as I said, one of my biggest mathematical areas of concern right now is that we have 21% of our population that went down a level from 3rd to 4th grade in math. What this doesn't show is, did those students go down from exceeding to meeting, or did they go down from meeting to approaching? We have that data per student also, but as an overall. So as I shared before, one of our celebrations is that performance improves as students are moving through the grades. A big celebration for me is one of my major concerns with fully departmentalizing our 6th grade is we went from 80 minutes of math to 53 minutes of math. So to see that we are still meeting the same levels of proficiency, even with decreased math time, is definitely a celebration and, you know, a real credit to our 6th grade math teacher. And we also looked at the 4th graders who participated in the high impact tutoring grant last year, which we do have the ability to be part of again this year, and 66% improved a performance level from 3rd grade. So in terms of next steps, right now, the reason the administrative team is not behind me is because they are actually all on a virtual workshop with Amplified Desmos. And our 4th and 5th grade parents, I told them I could do this one alone. They could take the parent population. So we are implementing a new math resource in grades 4 through 5. Our 4th grade teachers actually went to River Edge today for additional professional development on that math resource, and our 5th grade teachers River Edge will come here tomorrow, and our 5th grade teachers will have training. We continue to use the math staff developer we had used last year to talk about guided math workshop and differentiation to really target that. It's not just about the students that aren't meeting the standards. It's about moving the students that are meeting the standards to exceeding the standards. It's about moving the students that are approaching the standards, those bubble kids, to move them up. And that is really what our math workshops should happen. In terms of after-school professional development, we decided this summer to take some of our Title II funds. Title II is used for professional development. And we had a group of staff members that went to a math professional development session at Montclair State. It's called PRISM. Last year, all about fractions. It was called Fraction Boot Camp. And it was really about building a teacher's background of knowledge. Overall, elementary school teachers are very often known as language arts specialists and not necessarily math specialists. Many of them, if they come into the workforce, will actually say they don't like math. And so making sure their toolbox as a mathematician, not just as a math educator, was strong. And the teachers enjoyed it so much, we've decided to recreate it here after school. So we're going to use, we happen to hire an assistant principal and a director of curriculum that have a strong math base. So we're going to use them to teach, and some of the teachers that went to that boot camp to run our own fraction boot camp after school this year. We're continuing to work on our WIN period, and that is something we've spoken about a lot and I know is on a future curriculum committee agenda, and making sure teachers are looking at data all the time. So language arts. So this is our overview in language arts. I will share that when I first got our test results, I wasn't a happy superintendent. I was really concerned about third and fourth grade. I started to talk to superintendents across the county. It does seem that third grade scores were lower across the county. And this does say a little bit to that we have 6.5% of our students that did not meet proficiency in third grade language arts, and we didn't see that in any other content area. And then the state also has a higher number of did not meet proficiency as well. So because I like to be positive, we're going to go back over here now and not think about level 1 anymore. So our third graders show a 67.4% passing rate compared to 43.6% in the state, and then you can see that going down. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this fourth grade group again. I feel like I've been talking about them since last year. But you will see incredibly high passing rates in fifth grade and in sixth grade. And this is our subgroup analysis. Again, all students with IEP, and then the total number for multilingual learners. And then again, our subgroup analysis for ethnicity and race. You'll notice compared to science, I'm actually able to include 2 or more races because we have a bigger population to pull from. You will also notice that our Hispanic and Latino students are actually doing better in language arts than they are in math. And our proficiency with gender. And this is where I spend a lot of time right now. I'm really looking at this group because I have never seen us have this type of discrepancy between gender. So we are looking at our curriculum, we're looking at the text in the classrooms, and we're looking at what kind of programming we might be able to put together, because I'm guessing we have some disengaged male readers in third grade. Because to talk about a 22% discrepancy between females and males is something I've frankly never seen. And here we have our analysis, our 3-year trend analysis. And again, I want to point out that fourth grade group because last year we had a 90% passing rate in fourth grade, a 90% passing rate in fifth grade, and about an 86% in sixth grade. So I saw that 79.5, and I was really concerned. I did then look again at them from third graders. They're not decreasing in their comparison to the state. They're just not growing as fast as I would like to see them grow. So if you look at them in third graders, the discrepancy between the state and the district is 28.3 points, and the discrepancy in fourth grade, so that same group of kids compared to the same group of kids in the state, is now 28.7. So they're holding their own. They're just not growing like I would like to see them grow. But incredible kudos to our sixth grade language arts teachers, and really all our language arts teachers, because I always say that if you do well in sixth grade, it means good things have happened all the way up. That number actually is why we ran a sixth grade program this summer. There were so few students that didn't pass. We said, let's hit them over the summer and do something with them with some ESSER money that we had. And here is our trend again. And you really see this large discrepancy between the state and the district in fifth and sixth grade, not necessarily in third and fourth. And if there's some place to celebrate, I believe this is it. So if you look at this column right here, so going from 3rd grade to 4th grade, so last year's 4th graders, okay, currently 5th graders, 51% of them went up a level. So 1/2 of the population really grew. And that's something that I want to talk to our 4th grade teachers about. We want to know what did you do? Was there something that was different, because we haven't seen that growth before? And what can we replicate? And even this number, though, when we look at all grades, so 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th, 1/3 of our students moved up a level. Our concern as a district has always been that we don't want to just get kids to meeting. We want to make sure that all learners are moving forward. So that's a really nice statistic to show that. In terms of positives, as I said, the 51% of students increasing at least one proficiency level in the OPS class of 2026. So those are current 5th graders who were assessed in 4th grade. The fact that 48% of students in grades 4 through 6 are exceeding standards. And when we were trying to think about what are some stuff we just take for granted, right? We're a high achieving district. 19 OPS students got perfect scores. It's not a statistic I ever look at. We were in the middle of an admin meeting. I said, well, what other celebrations do you see? And somebody said, well, look at this. And I was like, oh, I think I took that one for granted. So some of our next steps in language arts, as I said, we did run a summer boost program for students entering 6th grade. We do have the implementation of a new curriculum. We are really, especially our October 14th day, we just finished the professional development on. It's continually looking at data to inform Tier 1 instruction, and also what are you doing during the WIN period. I do want to look deeper into our 3rd grade results. And we did take some of our Title I funding, and we will be running an outside of the school day program for students who are struggling in language arts in grades 4 through 6. So our final takeaways. You know me, I'm a perfectionist. I don't believe this is the best we've ever done. Last year was a real highlight for us, but I see some really great things. And I think to some extent, we're so used to performing really, really well that when we're not at that level, it just feels like a little bit of a letdown, but maybe that's also the impetus to dig deep and say we need to continue to make sure we're using data to inform instruction. We can't take for granted that a student is going to pass because they passed last year. We need to keep tracking that student. And we need to ensure that we're focusing on both achievement and growth. As I said, that 51% of those current 5th graders that moved up a level, I am so proud of those 4th grade teachers. I'm so proud of those kids, because that shows real growth. And we have a lot of new curriculum this year. And if you talk to an OPS teacher, they're probably feeling a little overwhelmed right now, because new language arts, new math at the same time, it feels like a lot. However, it's also a chance. It's a chance to try new things, see what the impact of them are, and continue to move forward. So, who wants to hit me first?
Any questions for Ms. Bozios from the board? Mr. Nutlin?
Megan, our 504 students, because they're less than 10, they're not considered a subgroup that we watch?
Correct.
Would you happen to know what percentage of your 504 students are, say, medical 504s, or ADHD kind of that have an impact on their actual learning?
Okay, they probably split down the row. We see more ADD ones as we get to the upper grades. We really try to push our parents to think about as 504 the best for a medical. If it's just food allergy, it shouldn't be a 504. It has to impact learning, right? It should be a health plan. So I'm going to say that we are seeing an increase in the ADHD ones. And really their modification is typically extended time.
Mr. Walsh?
Can you tell me how how many students we had, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade?
Right now, no. But I could get you that information. I can give you an estimate.
Estimate's good.
An estimate's good. Okay, so third grade last year had approximately 95 students.
Third grade,
Third grade, 95. Fourth grade had about 120 students. Fifth grade had 126 students. The grade that did well. And sixth grade, 106 students.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a lot of questions, but I noticed that in the analysis, we have a lot of students that are either IEPs or multilingual. The things that you're going to institute this year for the kids, do they have those categories in?
Yes, so we are giving professional development also to our special education teachers, and they too will have a new resource. And we actually did some scheduling changes regarding the WIN period to ensure that special education teachers could support those students during the WIN period, also to make sure that if there was a gap or a hole in the past, that it was getting filled.
Okay, I'll let somebody else go.
Mrs. Walker?
Thank you.
Sorry. I said an excellent presentation in that I liked all the comparisons, including male and female and all, because sometimes math students are always stronger, they say, in their math calculations and so on. But anyway, my question is, in language arts, they basically, the whole school, I'm looking at page 30, in language arts, we went up basically from our whole calculation of 75 and along the line, and a little bit more for sixth grade. In math, we went down in both, all of the kids went down. Well, not really third grade, but the number of, all of them went down in sixth grade and fifth grade.
Okay, remember that when you look at this data here, so this one over here, that this is the district, right? This is the state, so you're not comparing those two, right?
No.
So our,
So-
our third to, I'm a little confused on the going down, so,
Well,
I mean,
guess
fifth and sixth are pretty equal over here, so,
What-
or are you comparing that to this one?
what I was, and it's my mistake, because I was looking at 22.
Oh, okay,
So
yes.
that's not, that's
And that was a trend in 2022. So our third graders, that was a very interesting year for third graders. If you ever want to hear my whole deep dive into the data testing of that year, our third graders, you're right, that they continue to go down from third to sixth. And that is not the trend we are actually seeing right now.
yeah.
We're actually seeing our fifth and sixth graders are outperforming third and fourth grade.
And just the other one is a comment that 19 of our OPS students scored 100%. That's pretty cool.
It's something I've never looked at before. So it is something I will look at moving forward.
I have a question.
Mr. Darian?
Yes, regarding next steps, page 33. So you mentioned you want to dig deeper into the third grade results. specifically the gender discrepancy, but, you know, in general, I think third grade, I think you mentioned fourth grade in certain areas. I'd be curious to get some sort of feedback loop sometime throughout the next, however, time period, just specifically in that area, just to see, you know, what you saw, you know, even if it was nothing.
It is actually, like today, I started, and one of the things I looked at was, I looked at the actual subtests in language arts. So typically, when students take a test, they actually score higher in narrative writing than expository writing. In this group of third graders, they actually scored lower in narrative writing. So that was one of the things that I noticed, but I will put something together on what else I'm noticing. Their conventions were higher than their narrative writing. So their grammar and their use of mechanics was actually higher than their ability to tell a story.
And I'm assuming we're going to get an update in December when we look at the county results, right?
Of course.
Okay.
I'll start stalking board presentations next week, because I do an informal analysis by watching theirs, but I don't formally report to the board until the state releases
And
their data.
the state releases it in December?
Last year, I got it the day before a board meeting, and I think I was able to share at the last meeting in December.
Okay. And one final thing, I know that, you know, we have Linkit and we have other data that we're tracking, and we're doing a better job each year analyzing all this data. But if you come across any other tool or any other way of capturing more data other than testing, I'm not promoting, you know, additional testing just for data's sake. But if you hear of best practices where people are gathering data through using of tools, software, or whatever, I think that would be interesting, especially if maybe you wanted to pilot it into the areas within next steps. You know, I think, you know, while budgets are always tight, there's always room for, you know, greater insight into improving our instructional capabilities.
And that's actually one of the things we did this year with, last year I stood here and said that we needed to find a better screener for our K-1 mathematics, and we
Right.
are implementing a new one this
Right.
year.
Mr. Walsh?
Okay, I'm looking at the numbers now, my numbers.
Okay.
In the third grade,
Mr. Walsh, what page are you on?
what page?
Yeah, so I can look at
I'm
the same
on-
thing.
I'm on mathematics, the first. Oh, 15.
Thank you.
I almost got that wrong. Third grade, I see that about 33 students didn't pass. In fourth grade, I see that 30% of 120 or 100, we didn't know the number, but at least 30 students in the fourth grade. Fifth grade, about 30 students also. I'm not even counting sixth grade because Riverdale has them now. But, and I think that goes on both the math and the English, or the language arts. And you said that you were you're planning on having extra work for the kids in both subjects.
Well, that's what we do in the WIN period, yes. We give focused work on an area of weakness. So that's extra work.
How do you break a class down?
Oh, so how do you define what work students
Yeah,
need?
because you know what
Sure.
their weakness is.
Sure, so that's two things. So when I talk about, I'm going to specifically speak to math right now. So when I speak about our math staff developer, right, and we talk about the centers that students can do, that's one way that we can assign students to a center, and they can be working specifically on that skill, okay? And it's also during the WIN period when we assign students certain work, when we assign them a game, when we assign them to come work with a teacher because that's their weakness during that period.
Okay, that's the math.
And the same thing for language arts. All grades also have a focus period, win period for language arts as well. And that's also when, if you really do need significant assistance, which we would call tier 3 intervention, so you're a general education student, but you need, we've triangulated data, we've said that you are in greater need when you would go work with an intervention teacher.
You get extra homework?
Mr. Walsh, I'm lucky if everybody does their homework right now. So we're going to put off extra homework for now.
So the parents might get homework too?
Sure.
Because if you're behind in math and you're
grows.
missing a concept,
Yes.
you're going to be missing that concept until somebody helps you with it.
And that's why data analysis is so important. So when, I know one of the things we're really looking at the October 14th professional development is our Linkit results, because what's great about Linkit is it puts all the data in one spot. So if I want to look at a group of students and I want to look at how they've done on 3 different assessments at the same time, okay, to see like who's got a weakness in fractions, who's got a weakness in decimals, right?
Right.
That's part of what we're going to do, because we want to, even though that's last year's work, we want to make sure we filled that gap in a student's learning. So absolutely. But Mr. Walsh, well, those 30 kids that didn't pass, what about the 90 students that did pass?
Well, hopefully, they're going to be getting a lot smarter. And if I'm going to be sitting here next year, the numbers are going to be higher. A different grade will be taking a science test.
True.
And we only do in 5th grade.
Correct. It's grade 5, grade 8, and there's something in high school.
Does 4th grade get science?
Everyone has science, but the only grades that assess science are 5th grade.
Did you ever think of coming up with a test for the 4th graders?
Actually, that is a product we can buy from Linkit. It is not something we have currently decided to, because our science test results, while they may not have 100% passing, were last year the 2nd highest in the county. So it's not
I feel
necessarily.
bad for the county.
Perhaps, but we can't worry about all of them.
Mr. Del Greco?
Quick question. So the kids that are, I guess, pulled from WIN into intervention, are we tracking with the data those that are in there
Yeah.
to see if that actual intervention is making a difference
Yeah.
with the kids moving upwards?
You know what, we did it with the high impact tutoring. We do track the pre and post assessment for the intervention. Whatever the focus of the intervention is, we give a pre and a post assessment. I'm not sure if we have actually tracked, but it would be pretty easy to do. So it's a good thing to look at.
Want to just take a look?
Yeah, we push the button and it just goes
Maybe
out.
I did something to it.
No, no.
It was working. Yeah. What'd you do?
Nothing. I just pressed this. I'm not sure.
All right, good. Yeah, thank you. I have a request. If you could, on the subgroup analyses for the 3 subjects, if you could add a column and email the graph to the board. If you could add, you have all students, can you add a column for gen ed? Because you have all, and then you have
Yes,
IEP,
absolutely.
and then you have, some of them have, so can you add
Yeah.
a column for that and just email it to the board?
Absolutely, in all 3 categories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That concludes my report.
Your full superintendent report, or just, okay. Mr. Iapelli?
I have nothing to report right now.
Okay. Moving to minutes, we have review of September 4th. Any questions or comments, please email Mr. Iapelli. We have the approval of August 21st. Do I have a motion? Second by Mrs. Walker. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta is not here. Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Abstain.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Moving to committee reports, Mr. Darian, would you take administrative?
Yes, this evening we have several administrative items. The number A1 through A5, I'd like to introduce them. Thank you, John.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Mr. Darian, Mr. Del Greco?
A2, did any of the terms and conditions change upon a name, or is this a name change only?
No, rates are the same. Everything is the same.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Darian?
Yes, we have a couple of facility use this evening. You'll see under B1, I'd like to introduce 8 items. But before we go into that, I'd like to give an update on our last Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee meeting, which was just earlier this evening, and we already have a printed copy of the minutes. I must admit, Ms. Bozios was very good in taking notes, and she hit print, and it was literally hot off the press. So for the members of the community, we discussed just these several topics, the basketball court, the summer rooftop projects, the exhaust fans again, and the finalizing of that project, the finalizing of the roof replacements, and we talked about the playground equipment and enhancing or repairing some of that equipment. Bike racks, where we would put them, and how many we would install. And then we have what is commonly what I refer to as the Samuel list. And it is a lengthy list of items that we just keep track of and discuss. And usually, for most of them, they're just, we put them off because of the prioritization. But we did discuss them just to keep them top of mind. So with all of that, I'd like to introduce, I think I already did, B1.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Curriculum, Mrs. Norian?
I have no report at this point.
Finance, technology, Mrs. Acosta is not here. Mr. Darian, would you like to take that?
Sure. I'd like to introduce items D1 through D11.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions or comments? I have a question. I may have missed it again, but did we actually get a copy of the treasurer's report, the financial reports, the transfer of funds?
They should have been sent. I'm not.
Because it wasn't in, when would they have been sent? Because this was added after we got our packet, and it was added, I guess, today, because I looked at the agenda yesterday online.
Correct.
You want to pull, was it D8, D9?
I don't like to vote on the financial reports or to say that we certified whatever without seeing it, but it's up to the board. What do you think? Does it matter if we wait till the next meeting? We can wait. Did we get it? Like, if I look right now? Okay, I didn't know.
Why don't we just table it?
Do I need a motion to table, Catherine?
Yes.
Yes.
Remove D8.
I
Yeah.
need a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second
It has to come, it has to come from the person that made
Yeah.
the motion.
So I'd like to make a
initially.
motion to table D8, 9, 10, and 11 until we get the actual reports till next meeting.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Roll call.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey? Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes, as amended.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes, so now you have to make the motion to, we now have to do D1 through D7, right? I just made the motion to table D8 through to 11. Now we need
Okay,
to, put-
yeah,
so
yeah.
now you need to make a motion for D1 through D7.
Oh, I thought we were just voting on the
No,
whole.
that was just a tabling.
Oh, then, excuse me.
I'll second it.
Mr. Iapelli, I vote yes to, I didn't know what I was voting yes to.
Okay.
I vote yes to the motion to table the items.
Okay, can you make a new motion for D1
Make the
through
new
D7?
motion.
Yeah,
To
now I'd like
rest.
to make a second motion to introduce items D1 as amended through D7.
And second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey? Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker? Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes, delegate report, Mr. Walsh.
I have nothing to report.
Personnel, Mrs. Walker.
Mike?
I'll second it.
Is that better? I'd like to present F1. Before I did that, I just wanted to give you an overview of our meeting today, which again, Ms. Bozios was very busy getting the agendas out of what we covered. And just a quick update, we reviewed the new hires on the agenda, and that includes our new school counselor, which is in the audience tonight, Heather Brown Houston, and we're very pleased to have you. Welcome. And we reviewed additional changes for the admin team, and we will be getting into, they'll be presented to them, and then we'll get back to you after we have our presentation from Mr. Darian. We also hired a couple of extra teachers for the robotics classes, which showed last semester a large amount of students attended and not as enough teachers. So we have hired a couple more teachers. We reviewed salary requests from OAA, and we asked we have requested from our attorney investigative questions on HIB, what's legal and what isn't. And with that, I'd like to present F1.
I'll second.
I think Mrs. Norian beat you. Second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions? Mr. Del Greco?
Central office roles and responsibilities. It says follow up with attorney regarding responsibilities. Is this just job roles, kind of just making sure the JDs match? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco,
Yes.
Mrs. Downey? Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Policy, Mr. Del Greco.
We have not had any meetings since the last board meeting.
Do we need one? Or I guess you could
I haven't seen
talk
any
to-
updates from NJSBA. It's up to Ms. Bozius if we do.
Okay. Public Relations, Mrs. Downey.
I have nothing to report.
Open to the public? Any old or new business? I got it.
I have some new business.
Go ahead.
I have a new app. It's called Newsbreak, and I get a lot of local articles coming to me, more so than any other app. And I was reading today that Ramsey passed a resolution that bans cell phones in the school. And it varies based on elementary, middle, and high school. High school, they have some sort of special locker that everyone puts their cell phone in and it's locked. The middle school, they're allowed to have their cell phones in their backpacks, but they can't come out. And no cell phones at all at elementary school. And I thought that was interesting. And, you know, I reflect on when my kids were here and my kids were in high school and currently they're still in college. And I thought, you know, wow, how would I feel, you know, being disconnected, you know, with all this new technology? You get accustomed to being, you know, at least a text or something, right? But then I thought back, well, what happened when I was in school? And then I remembered that every classroom has a phone, a telephone, and the school has a front office. And if there's something that happens during the day, we have administrators and teachers who are adults who are responsible for our children. So they'll be fine. And if there's an emergency, you can call the school and they'll pass a message on and so on and so forth. Or, you know, you get the teacher in the classroom on the phone. And I thought, maybe this is something we can talk about and consider. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm an advocate right now, but I thought it was, you know, initial ideas is, you know, cell phones. I think that pendulum is getting to we passed the peak, and, you know, people are starting to wanting to spend less and less time on them. So I think over the next couple of weeks, if you just think about it, and if you want to do some research on it, or you know, build a case against me with stats and statistics and how it's such a bad idea. But I just thought about this. It came up today. I read it in the article, so I thought I'd just mention it tonight.
Greg, to piggyback that, I think there's a lot of studies coming out from these high schools that have shut down or have eliminated cell phones, and they're seeing progress in the classrooms. They're seeing less distractions. They're having less issues with bad behaviors that come along with it. So you're onto something. I can tell you in my school, it's a remarkable distraction. So you're sniffing in the right places.
Who did this come from?
It was just a local article about what happened at Ramsey. Their policy goes into effect in January.
Are you saying we allow cell phones here? I don't think we do. I mean, we allow them in the backpack.
We allow them in the backpacks.
Right.
Is it? Because I thought they said, maybe I misread.
If I remember correctly, what I read is Ramsey's policy is elementary school is in the backpack, middle school is in the locker, and high school will be using Yonder, which is a little device that they put it in. We have been much tighter with our students this year. The biggest issue we have is actually not cell phones. Right now, it's smartwatches. And we do a reminder immediately when you enter the building, like it has to be off.
That's in our policy, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, it's in our policy. Yeah.
On that watch topic, are there any, I think part of the debate now is medical devices?
Those students have, if it's in your 504 or in your IEP, that for different needs, even students, as we were talking about, students with 504 with ADHD, there are sometimes apps that a student is using in their 504, so that student has. Or if you're a younger student and it reminds you to go to the bathroom, that too.
One point of business, Ms. Bozios mentioned that our next board meeting is actually during the convention, so she mentioned that maybe we move our October 23rd meeting to October 30th. So is everyone okay with that? Because we only have one meeting in November anyway, right? So we're going to move our next meeting to October 30th, and if Mr. Iapelli, you could just advertise that and send that out. Any other new or old business? Mrs. Walker.
Just to announce, I don't know, I'm sure you all saw that the New Jersey School Board is having their first meeting on September 30th, and the title of the dinner meeting down in Hasbrook Heights is Embracing the Power of AI, and it's being presented by Superintendent Peter Hughes of Cresskill. It seems like it would be a very interesting presentation. I already signed up, thanks to Peter. I got a confirmation from them. And you can attend either virtually or down there. So
Is that the Hilton or the Holiday Inn? I showed up at the wrong one last time.
Holiday Inn.
Holiday Inn.
Yes, I showed up and
It's
the
where we
entire
came as-
hotel was standing outside with the fire alarms going. So I called I texted Ms. O, I'm like, where are you? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, everyone's outside. Where? She's like, what do you mean everyone's outside? I'm like, oh, I'm at the wrong hotel.
That's the wrong hotel that I went to.
Because they
too.
used to do
Yeah,
it there,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Where is the meeting?
Hasbrook Heights
Heights
Holiday
Holiday
Inn,
Holiday
not
Inn
Hilton.
on Route 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the
On
old
the s-
Bananas, I
on
don't
the
know if
southbound
it's still
side.
Bananas.
It's on the southbound
Yeah.
side.
Is it still Bananas there, the comedy
It might
club
be.
that used to be there?
It's still the Holiday Inn.
The comedy club is what I was saying. Is it still the comedy club?
September
that
30th?
is
When is it?
where-
September 30th? When did you say
Yeah.
September 30th?
September
A Monday?
30th is a Monday.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other old or new business? I would like to go into a very quick closed session for personnel and for personnel issues. So, Mr. Darian, would you make a motion? Oh, wait, and legal. Personnel and legal.
Okay, I make a motion or a second?
A motion.
Okay. I thought
And
you-
I'll second it.
I make a motion, we go into closed session. Thank you.
Second?
Roll call?
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, we will not be taking any action after, and it should not be long.